Now, the government's unveiled a plan to increase the length of sentences for domestic killers who have a history of coercive or controlling behaviour.
Well, under the new plan, sentencing guidelines around rough sex will also be reviewed.
Let's talk to the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. Good morning to you. Nice to see you this morning. Why is there a need to change all of this?
Good morning. Well, we've just had a review by Claire Wade, Casey, into all of the murder and manslaughter sentences, and it's clear in my mind that there are a lot of discrepancies. We're going to respond to all 17 recommendations in the summer, but right now I think we do need to increase the sentence for murders in the home, predominantly men against women, where there's what's called coercive and controlling behaviour, if you like, the slow torment up until the murder itself. We think that should be reflected in the sentence, so I'm going to introduce a statutory aggravating factor which could increase the sentence by anything up to 2 years or more, and we'll consult on a 25-year starting point so that the full horror, pain and suffering is reflected in the sentence. At the same time, we're also going to increase the sentences for overkill. You can think of the horrific cases of Ellie Gould and Poppy Devi Waterhouse, and make sure again that those sentences are increased. And as you mentioned in your clip, we're also going to reduce the impact of the so-called rough sex defence in manslaughter cases, where typically sentences can be as low as 5 years, where there is a sexual intercourse resulting in the death of predominantly the woman in most of these cases, and the perpetrator claims consensual rough sex. I think that in those kinds of horrific cases, the starting point should be more in the realm of 8 to 12 years. So I'm going to write to the Sentencing Council to seek them to take a look at this and change the rules. It's their prerogative, but I have a role to play in urging them and taking the initiative in this regard.
Women's safety campaigners, they of course welcome this news that you're talking about today, but they will be apprehensive about the weight of the aggravating factors when they're actually given in court. I mean, you mentioned there that 25-year sentence starting point. When do you think we could actually start to see that happen in sentencing? Because currently, the way the law stands, you have to actually have a knife taken to a scene, showing intent in order to be given a 25-year plus sentence.
So I'm going to, for controlling coercive behaviour, introduce that statutory aggravating factor which will boost the sentences as soon as possible. We'll consult on the 25-year minimum starting point. I understand the point that's made about introducing a minimum 25-year sentence for the use of a knife in murder cases in the home. The challenge is the practice, if you look at the evidence, suggests that this may disproportionately impact on the relatively smaller number of women who commit those crimes because, for example, they're subject to abuse over many years and they snap and they reach for a knife. And so I think we need to be quite thoughtful about that. I will look at that in the context of the wider Wade Review recommendations and we'll respond fully in the summer. But right now, the three things I mentioned, coercive controlling behaviour, overkill and the rough sex defence, are things that I think I'm persuaded that the evidence is there that we need to provide stronger sentences. And look, I want every woman to know that the full strength of the law will protect them and keep men who commit these appalling crimes in jail for much longer.
I mean, it's interesting you talk so much about coercive behaviour because it's being reported this morning, as you will be aware, that the investigation into your behaviour, which we're expecting that report to come out pretty soon, that some of the people who claim to have been involved in this say, it's been reported, they say you ruined people's lives through coercive behaviour. How do you respond to that?
Sorry, just to be clear, I'm not going to comment on the investigation. It would be improper for me to do so. It would be contrary to the rules. I'm not going to respond to anonymous reports in the media. But can I just say, any equivalence that you're drawing between anything that I may have been accused of and the kinds of horrific crimes that I'm talking about today is preposterous and frankly unconscionable.
Yeah, but would you agree then that coercive behaviour under any circumstances is a bad thing?
Well, actually, coercive behaviour in the context of a prison is critically important. But you're just comparing totally different things, and I think you should take a step back from that line of inquiry. I've been very transparent about all of these things, but I'm not going to comment on the inquiry while it's undergoing. Just to be clear, anyone that does is breaching the rules of the inquiry, and I'm not going to do that because, as I say, I'm committed to behaving with professional integrity.
If the bullying allegations are upheld in this investigation, as Stephen says, we should hear the outcome of that in the next few weeks. Would you resign if those bullying allegations were upheld?
So I've made clear all along I'm not going to comment further on anything in relation to the inquiry. I'm sorry, it's not the right thing for me to do.
OK, well, we understand that point. What are we to make of the strike situation and this deal with members of the NHS within England? There is, I mean, still, this isn't solved yet. This has to go to the members, though it's recommended by the majority of the unions. But it doesn't solve any of the problems with doctors and junior doctors, does it? Do you think this is going to be some sort of stepping stone?
Well, look, I think it's good news that in all of those areas, the vast majority of the unions have accepted the deal that has been offered following the discussions with the Health Secretary. Look, in relation to junior doctors, I know that the Health Secretary has extended the offer for negotiations with the BMA. The same offer is there. I think it will be the right thing to do for them to accept it. I hope they will. I think it's a good deal which is fair, which recognises the situation they're in, that recognises the need that we've all got to tackle the backlog in the NHS. But I also think it's being crafted in a way which won't make inflation worse, and we've seen the reports that inflation will come down this year to 2.9% from 11% in October. So we've got the right plan. We need to stick with it, and I hope that the junior doctors will accept this offer as well.
I mean, there is criticism this morning that this deal, the 5% rise, is very similar to an agreement that was on the table at the start of January. And in that time, there are patients who have had appointments delayed, perhaps they've had operations cancelled or postponed. I mean, there has been 6 weeks of misery for NHS patients before this announcement. I mean, many people will be asking, what took the government so long to get around the table and get this sort of offer on the table?
Well, actually, it's well below what the Royal College of Nurses was originally asking for, and of course it's well below the 35% pay rise that the BMA are asking for in relation to junior doctors. But look, compromise is required. I think Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, has done an excellent job. We want to recognise the particular situation of nurses and all doctors and medical staff. They do an amazing job for us. We've got to protect the wider economy and the inflation and get it down because it eats away at salaries, particularly the lowest paid. And I think it was a good, sensible compromise, and we hope that the junior doctors will accept it as well.
In terms of those who are struggling at the moment, there's obviously huge swathes of the population who are really struggling at the moment. Did the budget head in the right direction? I mean, in the sense that, you know, the big headline, if you like, was the change to pension rules, which by the very nature of being able to save more than £1 million of being 40 to 60,000 a year you can put away, I mean, that only is going to benefit the very rich, isn't it?
That's one element, and I think it's important, for example, with doctors, that will keep more doctors in the NHS, that will help us get the backlog down. But of course, there was a whole range of other measures, including the uprating of benefits and the extension of 33 hours of childcare to mums of 9-month-old to 4-year-old infants, babies and young children. There's the freeze and fuel duty. And above all, I think you can see that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor's plan is working. Inflation is, as I said, scheduled to come down to 2.9% from that peak of 11%. The economy is going to grow in 2023. There were some fears of recession. Debt is now scheduled to come down, slated to come down in line with the government's plan. And if you look at at the PwC survey of global CEOs, Britain is the third most attractive destination for foreign investment. So there's still some way to go. We know that people are struggling. The support is there. The energy price guarantee has been extended for 3 months. But we've got the right plan. It's working. We've got to continue with it.